Welcome back to the Compressor Guru. Today we're going to talk about some word definitions slash glossary and being able to identify them on site. Now, this was a suggestion from a viewer in Texas, Paul, thank you. And the more I thought about how to do this episode, the more I realized I want you to know. The last one we're going to do today is the biggest reason I want you to be able to identify what part we're talking about when you call or email me. So we'll get to that. We've got, I think, 5 parts here. We should have done this like a countdown. Anyway, so number 1, and this isn't real common with a lot of the home shops, but what we have here is an automatic tank drain. And the auto tank drain literally goes on the bottom of the compressor, and there's a couple different configurations, but on modern machines this is most common, and it's an interesting part, and you can control how often it bleeds and how long it bleeds with these 2 different dials. So it plugs into 110, and we have a very good price on these. You can order these from me. Contact me through thecompressorguru.com. Are you going to try to sing that today, Val?
.com.
You're still ripping that tune off. Anyway.
.com.
So, if you got something with a wire going into it on the bottom of the tank, this is a auto tank drain. Now, Champion / Garden of Denver have an odd one that looks like a giant diaphragm bracket that works off the centrifugal unloader. I do not have a picture of one of those here. There's not a lot of those machines out there, but there's a few different styles of auto tank drains. Ingersoll used to use basically a little kettle pot with a float device in it, and so there's some different things out there, but in modern era, this is one of the most common ones. Moving on. Our next item is a pilot valve. Now there's 3 here, but there's only one function. All 3 of them do. They look different, but what we have here are 3 different brands. This is what Ingersoll sells. This is a Quincy, and this is a generic. So they can look very different. The camera wife said between scenes, go ahead, Belle, what did you say?
So are these pop-off valves?
No.
But you said they pop off.
Well, they pop off, but when they pop off, I'm going to mute her for a second, like I could. What these do is when the compressor is pumping, these are used on compressors that have head unloaders or an unloader of some type, usually head unloaders. And when the compressor reaches full pressure, this little stem comes out and it sends air to the head and it unloads the compressor, and it freewheels and essentially it idles. On the gas or diesel systems, it will also have a slave cylinder that runs the diesel or gas engine, and it will idle it down and the compressor will quit pumping. And then when you use some air out and you reach the demand point again, this stem will pop back in. It popped out to begin with. The camera wife got confused and says, you called it a pop-off valve. No, it pops when it unloads, but yeah. Anyway, this is a pilot valve, governor, aux valve, several different names, but we're going to call them a pilot valve. So if you call in and say, hey, I got a bad pilot valve, I think we're talking about the same things. I'm going to pull out our next item right now to show you the differences between a safety valve or a pop-off and...
So a safety valve is a pop-off valve.
A safety valve, a common A safety valve, common parlance, common vernacular, it's a pop-off valve. Or
Parlance?
it's another word for vernacular.
It's the word of the day? I don't
It
know.
is, it is now. So this is a safety valve or a pop-off valve. You'll see it's got a single setting. It's all they're factory preset. And these ones have two settings. The smaller part of the pilot valve is your pressure, and the bigger part of the pilot valve, where this adjustment nut is here, that's your differential setting. Please don't try to set these, they are touchy. So that being said, these are pilot valves. This is a pop-off or a safety valve. These do go when they reach full pressure, and you won't hear that because everything's noisy, but the little stem pops up, not confusing it with a pop-off valve. Little stem pops up, unloads the compressor, maybe idles the engine down, and these are used on either gas or electric machines. Usually on an electric machine they're designated as a dual pilot, but we're going to get to a dual pilot. We have a very specific dual pilot valve here somewhere. I hope. Anyway, okay, we were just talking about the pilot valve, and we showed you the difference between the pilot valve and the safety valve or pop-off valve. The safety valves are used on gas, diesel, or electric machines. These are ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. Is that the right word?
I don't know. I just
These are everywhere.
thank you. I'm like,
The safety valve is everywhere. The safety valve protects your tank. It protects the intercooler. It protects the discharge line on some compressors between the compressor and the check valve. A lot of places you'll find safety valves or pop-offs on a compressor. Safety valves are preset at a designated pressure. I could bring a whole bunch in here because I have them on stock from 60 to 325 pounds, but they all look like this. And the only exception to them looking like this is if you buy a Quincy safety valve, they're about that tall and they look like this. So that's a safety valve. So if you call me and you got one of these and you're going to say, I got a safety valve that's giving me problems, I'm going to be thinking you're talking about that. Like I said earlier in the episode, the more I thought about doing this glossary episode, the more selfish I got that I'm going to be able to talk using the same words to my customers that watch this. So this is a safety valve. They're preset at different pressures, and if this is a 200-pound safety, so it'd be on a tank that's maximum working pressure 200 pounds, and if that tank, if you have a pressure switch freeze in the shuck position and it keeps pumping, the safety valve will pop off at 201, 205 pounds and bleed more air than the compressor can produce, thus protecting you from a tank failure. By the way, if you wonder how dangerous a tank failure is, check out the link in the description of one of my more popular videos. This video may save your life. Our next item is a dual pilot valve, and I don't have one, but I believe I'm a good enough communicator. I can share with you the difference between this, a pilot valve, and a dual pilot valve. A dual pilot valve is used only on an electric machine, and what it does is it turns on or turns off at the operator's request, and if a compressor starts and stops more than 6 times an hour, you walk over and you turn the valve on for the dual pilot, and the compressor then runs on the pilot valve. They look very, very similar to this, but you can use a pilot valve and turn it into a dual pilot very simply by putting a ball valve here on the inlet of the pilot valve. When you want the pilot valve to operate, you open the ball valve. When you want it to run on the pressure switch, you close the ball valve. So a dual pilot valve gives you the choice on an electrical machine whether you want to run on the pressure switch or whether you want to run a constant run on the pilot. Our next item is a check valve. And check valves are on either a gas or diesel machine or on an electric machine. However, I will say this, because of our next item, a check valve is far more prevalent on electric machines than the engine-driven machines. We have a video about everything you ever want to know about a check valve, but we're afraid to ask. You can see all the different check valve types there. We'll put the link in the description. And this stops the air. Once it goes this way, it goes into the tank, and when the machine shuts down or the compressor quits pumping, there's a little flapper in here, goes shut and doesn't let the air come back. It's a check valve, and see everything I ever wanted to know about a check valve but was afraid to ask. So our next item is a load genie, and these are used only on gas or diesel machines. And what this does, it is a pilot. It is a pilot and a check valve, all rolled into one piece of brass. And what it does is the air comes in here from the compressor and goes out of here to the tank. When the compressor reaches 175 pounds or 150 pounds, wherever it's set, this pops just like your pilot valve. This pops up and it acts like a check valve, and it quits putting the air into the tank. A valve inside closes, and then the air that was going into the tank comes out of this. This is a discharge port with a little baby muffler on it. So the air that is coming in from the compressor goes back to atmosphere. This is only used on compressors that don't have head unloaders. Your Ingersoll 2475s on a 30-gallon tank run by a Honda engine. This is a very popular machine on that particular compressor. The other thing this does is there's a little 1/8-inch port here, and it's got a little pipe plug in it. And when you reach full pressure, you take this plug out, you put a line in, put it to your carburetor on your engine or your injection pump on your diesel. You put a line in, and you can run the slave cylinder off the air. That air only comes out. I killed it. I got it. That air only comes out when the stem is up and it's unloaded. So this is a load genie. So we're down to electric items only. These are called different names, but they're all the same thing. Magnetic starter, definite purpose starter, contactor. It depends which electrician you talk to is going to be what he's calling it. So what these do is these have large points in them, and when they're told to by a switch, the large points slap together and send power from the line to the compressor motor. This is a magnetic starter. This is what it looks like on the inside. And this is what it looks like on the outside. In almost all magnetic starters, you're going to see some sort of reset button. And I get a lot of comments like, well, I'm having problems with that reset box. Okay, you mean the magnetic starter? Well, I don't know. And so these are magnetic starters. They are used on larger compressors, and I'm basically going to say 5 horsepower and up. And that will lead us to our next and final item that is most commonly called something it isn't. And the final part that I hear most commonly called the wrong name is a pressure switch. There's a pressure switch. Here's a pressure switch. And here is another pressure switch. This is just slightly different than this one, but they're all pressure switches. Let me be the guy calling in and saying, hey, I'm having problems with my regulator. Now, a regulator is an item that you take 200-pound air, run it through the regulator, and you set it for 70 pounds or 90 pounds to run into your shop or your tool. It's a device that receives air and discharges air, and you can control the pressure the air discharges at. I think the reason guys call these regulators is the old-fashioned regulators you used to see on cars with generators before alternators. It was a square electric box that went from the output side of the generator to the battery and the electrical system. And it was a little square box. This is a little square box, and if I don't hear it once a week, it's a strange week where somebody doesn't call and say, hey, I'm having problems with my regulator. The machine won't shut off. That's the giveaway that they're talking about a pressure switch and not a regulator. So this is a pressure switch. The pressure switch operates the magnetic starter. And when this switch closes, it sends power to this switch to operate the contactor. When that contactor closes, it sends the big power from the line coming into it up to the motor. And this little switch will not take the electrical amperage that this switch will. You can actually wire this compressor up to run off a pressure switch, but you'll be changing pressure switches every time you change oil because they'll burn up. You need to put yourself a magnetic starter on anything 5 horsepower and up. So you need your pressure switch and you need your starter. That all being said, we're getting into technical needs. What this is a pressure switch. It is not a regulator. Oops. So, folks, you can call me, you can contact me, but when you do, if you've seen this episode, we have a better chance of communicating easily. In any event, we'll help you any way we can. We sell all these parts, so if you're looking to, you need a starter, you need a pressure switch, you need a load genie, a dual pilot, anything we've showed here today.
Except for we don't have a dual pilot right
I
now.
don't have dual pilot on stock.
But we will.
We will. I put my door on our new parts building today, and that means we can start cleaning up the shop and the office because we've got new parts strewn everywhere, and we are increasing our inventory to better service you. So that's another thing we'll be putting back on stock is a dual pilot. Anyway, thank you. God bless, and hit that like, subscribe, and then notify bell. And we have a unusual episode coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's essentially catching lightning in a bottle, catching a problem before it blew up. and we're going to show you what the problem is, and then it's just a normal rebuild. But we're gonna be filming that very soon, and that'll be up in a couple weeks. Thank you. God bless. Have a great day.